Hello, I'm Shazza and this is Hooked on Books. Welcome! And welcome to my bookshelves. These are actually my translated fiction shelves. So every book that you're seeing here is translated, and it's no secret that I am a person that loves translated fiction, but I did notice that in 2018 I didn't read as much translated fiction as I would have liked, and that's something that I would like to change. And I thought a good way to do that is to create a sort of series on my channel where I talk about translated fiction. And how I've decided to do it is that I'm going to pick 3 books and I will discuss the 3 books, and I will make it really simple by going through the books that I own alphabetically, because I do keep them in alphabetical order. And for instance, you know, if I look at the first 3 books on my shelves, I can say if I haven't read the first 3, then I have to read all 3. If I've read one of them but haven't read the second one and I've read the third one, then I just have to read the second one and then I can talk about the 3. Anyway, blah blah blah. Annoyingly, I came up with this idea and I thought about it for quite a while now, and then the other day I bought some books, one of which just so happened to end up being on the second book on my shelf, meaning that my whole system fell apart. Anyway, you don't care about the system is for me more than anything. So I'm kind of going through them alphabetically. I'm breaking the rules this time, but the new book that I got, it means that I have to read that, and you'll hear about that new book next time, which is really good because usually when I buy new books it takes me ages and ages before I actually get to picking them up, so now I have to if I want to keep this series going the way it is. I may end up changing it entirely and just picking 3 random books that I want to talk about, but I'm kind of avoiding that because I feel like I'll just talk about the same books that I've probably mentioned over and over again. Anyway, enough of the spiel. I'm going to talk about 3 books. So first up we have got The Story of Honggildong, which doesn't actually have an author on it, so that's why it ends up number 1 on my bookshelves. I really like the cover of this book. So it's Penguin Classics, so it's got that sort of traditional black and white from the Penguin Classics editions, combined with this really sort of bright and colourful image, which I really love. The book itself is kind of a bit like a folktale, has like a folktale feel to it, and it's a, you know, traditional, well-known classic in Korea. And it's about this son who is an illegitimate son of a government minister, so he is a lower class citizen and therefore he can't sort of have a career within the government, but his brilliance comes out in other ways, and he is a bit of an adventurous character, and you know, he has a lot going for him. He conquers a kingdom, he becomes a bandit, and there's fantasy elements in here, so he's involved in a lot with wizardry. So it's a really sort of fun, adventurous folktale, and he's an underdog character, obviously, which is something that's quite common in a lot of fiction, but I quite enjoy that. So I really enjoyed this little book. It didn't completely blow me away, and there's elements of it that maybe it felt a little bit disjointed for me, but I did enjoy the story, and it's quite a short one, and I really do like short books as well. But I do really recommend this if it does sound like your kind of thing. And I don't often read classics, so reading sort of a classic translated fiction is something that I'm quite pleased that I've done, and something that I'd like to read more of. But yes, I do recommend this, and I did enjoy it, and it's one that I do sometimes think about. I probably would read this again as well. Next up we have got The Woman in the Dunes, which is the second book on my shelf, and this is a modern classic and it's translated from the Japanese. And I think that the title of this book probably drew me in more than anything. I just feel like it's a title that I would instantly be intrigued to see what that was about. And I read this just last year, and I know at the time my feelings towards it were quite mixed. There was elements that I really loved and elements I wasn't as sure about. And I feel like at this stage, on reflection, I'm kind of looking back at it more fondly. So I would be interested in potentially reading this again in the future to see what I think about it again, because it was a strange little book. Very strange, but I enjoy strangeness in books a lot of the time, and I often find a lot of translated books to have that sort of strange feeling to it, quite surreal, and that's often why I end up really liking translated fiction. And this was a book about a character who was going out searching for insects, and I loved all that. I loved all the stuff in the beginning about the insects that he was searching for. The descriptions on that I really appreciated, and it kind of intrigued me a lot. And then he ends up in this village, and he gets trapped in this village with another woman, and it's very eerie, very suffocating, very surreal. If you like books that are somewhat strange, I do recommend this. It does say on the back that it's kind of described as a haunting Kafka-esque nightmare, so that probably illustrates perfectly what this is kind of like. It does feel like a little bit of a nightmare when you're reading it. There's also a few illustrations in here which I quite appreciated. I don't know if they're entirely necessary, but I always just appreciate the added addition of that. To give you an idea maybe what the writing style is like, I'll just read a couple of bits. The village, resembling the cross-section of a beehive, lay sprawled over the dunes, or rather the dunes lay sprawled over the village. Either way, it was a disturbing and unsettling landscape, and it was quite a disturbing and unsettling story as well, so the landscape kind of matched the story. I rather think the world is like sand. The fundamental nature of sand is very difficult to grasp, and when you think of it in its stationary state, sand not only flows, but this very flow is the sand. So there's a lot of sort of those thoughtful kind of thinky, what I call thinky passages in here as well. So yes, I did enjoy this, and it's definitely not a book I would be getting rid of anytime soon, and in fact it's probably one of the ones that I would definitely be interested in reading again. So that is The Woman in the Dunes. The third book on my shelf just so happens to be A General Theory of Oblivion, which I have mentioned on my channel far too many times, but it's a brilliant book, therefore I'm happy to mention it again. So yes, I really enjoy this book. It's translated from the Portuguese. It may well be the only Portuguese book I have. Part of the reason why I think this series is going to be interesting for me is for me to discover if there's a particular area in the world that I read more books. You know, do I read loads of Japanese books, or do I read loads of Korean books? Do I read loads of Portuguese books? I'm going to be interested to see if there is any correlation. But we will see as we go along. But A General Theory of Oblivion, as I've said many times, it's about this character, Ludo, who locks herself inside of her apartment for like 30 years, and it's just a fascinating story about how she gets snippets of the outside world, and you kind of get inside her mind a lot, which is something that I love. I love hearing about people's internal worlds. I love the thoughts that they have, the kind of thoughtful descriptions you get of their internal world. So this is a fantastic book, and I do truly recommend this. Out of the three that I've mentioned, it's probably my favourite. To give you an example of some of the language in here, I have just picked a random page, so I'm going to read it. I am afraid of what's outside the window, of the air that arrives and bursts and the noise it brings with it. I am scared of mosquitoes, the myriad of insects I don't know how to name. I am foreign to everything, like a bird that has fallen into the current of a river. I don't understand the languages I hear outside, the languages the radio brings into the house. I don't understand what they're saying, not even when they sound like they're speaking Portuguese, because this Portuguese they are speaking is no longer mine. Even the light seems strange to me. Too much light. Certain colours ought not to occur in a healthy sky. I am closer to my dog than to those people out there. So that gives you an example of the type of writing that is in here, but overall, yes, I absolutely love this, and it's definitely my favourite of the three. So those are the first three translated books on my shelves. So that's The Story of Honggildong, The Woman in the Dunes, and A General Theory of Oblivion, and they're all three books that I really enjoy, and I'm looking forward to going through my shelves and reading more of the books that are there, as well as talking about books that I've already read. And I hope that you enjoy this. It's something that I'm quite passionate about, and this is a really good way to get me to read more translated fiction. If you've read these, let me know your thoughts and your opinions. If you haven't read them, if you're interested in them, all that good stuff in the comments below. I do love chatting with you. I'm always a bit slow to reply, but I always do reply in the end. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I shall see you again soon in my next video. Bye. It brings with it. I am scared of mosquitoes. Ah, fucking hell.